What's up, everybody? Welcome. It is Thursday afternoon, a Thursday afternoon live. Haven't done these in a little while because normally I'm traveling for football. No football game for me this week, just hanging out. Next week I'll be calling Iowa and Maryland. So let's first tell you that this show is brought to you by our sponsor, the wonderful people, the Adler brothers at Puesto, Mexican Artisan Kitchen. If you are going to Levi Stadium, you got to go to one of the two locations of Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen. You get the Baja fried fish tacos, the crispy shrimp with the barbecue sauce, the sweet and sour, the tamarindo sauce. You get the filet mignon taco. Didn't know it existed. I don't know how the rest of the world hasn't caught on. How is every place that serves food not serving filet mignon tacos, let alone my personal favorite? As you know, the short rib quesadilla taco with the crispy melted cheese, the Jalisco salsa. It's got the juicy short rib, the ooey gooey crispy melted cheese, little kick of Jalisco. It's comfort food with a south of the border flair. That's not their wording. That's mine. And of course, they got locations throughout California. They got two in the Bay Area, Concord and Santa Clara. They got San Diego. They got Orange County. They got guacamole. They got ceviche. They got chicken flautas and chicharrones and chilaquiles and potato taquitos and the shrimp gobernador quesadilla. Go open the door and get in my belly. I love Puesto. I get messages from people every week that say, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank them. The margaritas. You're going to Levi Stadium or you're going inside a restaurant, you want the margaritas. All right. The fresh lime juice, the fresh strawberries. They are making fresh tortillas inside of the football stadium. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is doing that but Puesto. So swing by the two booths at Levi's, go to their brick and mortars. They're crushing it. They are 49er fans. So like most of you who are 49er fans, if you need the sweet embrace of love, you're going to get that in the form of fantastic food at Puesto. Go check it out. And thanks to Puesto for the continued support of the show. All right. I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk about Tom Tolbert and John Lund losing their jobs at KNBR because it feels not because I really respect both of them, but because it just feels weird to do it as content. You know what I mean? But I'm going to do it because I had a lot of people ask me about it, and I think it's probably, I guess, I don't know, maybe it's the right, I don't know, right or wrong, whatever. But it's for those of you who are Bay Area people or have been Bay Area people for a while, then this is definitely a topic for you, right? It's something that anybody who's been around Bay Area sports probably for more than a couple of years you're into. I got some other stuff to get to today, but I'll start with this. I got a letter in the mail from the Nielsen ratings folks. It says your household, along with a few other households in your area, have been randomly selected to participate in this important research study. They want to find out if I can be a Nielsen ratings person. What type of shows do you listen to radio? This is ratings. The algorithm on the internet, the metrics, not the algorithm, the metrics on the internet are very specific. In radio for a long time, they are not very specific. They do an okay job. They get a few people. They say those people are a cross-section and representative of the larger group. And that's how they figure out who's listening. And if you're an advertiser and your only option is that, and they come to you and say, hey, our ratings are huge, man. You got to give us your money. And there's only radio and there's only television. That's what you do. But the world has changed. And less people are listening to radio, just like less people are watching traditional television. And that means that even if you're winning at that, there's less money in it. There was a time when radio dominated everything, like beyond the last 10 years. in the last 25 years. There was a golden age. I mean, certainly the 90s and before that was a golden age. But even in the early 2000s, I'm going to talk about Tom Tolbert and John Lund separately. And they don't, these are, anyway, I'm going to stop saying that I feel weird doing it. I'm just going to do it. But first, Tom, I guess is still going to do his radio show Thursday. And I worked with Tom most recently last year, the year before, doing a Warriors game on radio where he does his games. But really, like, I grew up in Davis, which is an hour 15 outside of the Bay Area. And Tom was doing the Razor and Mr. T, and it was legendary. It is. I mean, it is. It was KNBR radio. If you're not in California, you probably don't know, but there are 50, at least at last time I checked, there were 50 stations in America that have 50,000 watts of power, and KNBR is one of them. And that means it reaches all the way down to Arizona on a clear day. So everybody listened to it, the Razor and Mr. T. I can remember in the car with my dad listening to them. And what made Tom special, it's funny, it's what would work again today. It's like some of the McAfee stuff that works, some of the Barstool stuff that works. Radio became, after post-golden age of radio, but still in the last 15 years, became very focused on the metrics. And they're not algorithms, but there is a game you have to play with the clock. And that's why ESPN was really the gold standard of it. If you listened, it was so structured, and there would be a tease and coming up in 5 minutes, and in the bottom of the hour, this guest, and then we're going to break at the exact right time because we're trying to get a quarter hour. And if we get you to stay for 2 segments, now the Nielsen people, it's going to rate and all that stuff. And as that happened, and everyone became more and more worried about teasing and breaks and the clock and metrics, what made Tom great was just being genuine. You never felt like he was trying to manipulate you, the listener. And it's funny because now, like, people listen to McAfee and they go, oh, that's he's so different than everything else. He just talks about whatever he wants to talk about, how he wants to talk about. The same thing that McAfee does, where just like these huge guests are comfortable for a variety of reasons. But what is one of the reasons? Because it never feels, beyond just his personality is great. He's fun, right? And Tolbert had this thing too, where the guest never felt like the host, when it was him or like McAfee does this, is trying to get something out of them so that they can go viral and get credit for it. I think so many guests became aware of the fact that they're there to create. They need to get something out of them for this to be worthwhile. And Tom didn't treat people that way. So it's funny that it's like his show, he on radio, at least in that place, it's now after today going to be in the past, because it actually is some of what feels so refreshing to people in other ways. And he made the biggest guests comfortable. Of course, he played in the NBA. He played for all time, for great Arizona Wildcats basketball teams. We played in the NBA, so he had a very special standing. But, I think people would always go to that. Oh, he played, and so people are super comfortable with him. But I actually think it was just him. It was him. He was just making people comfortable, having good conversation, and it worked. John Lund was hugely influential on my career. I moved to the Bay Area in 2012, and John and Greg Papa began doing a show together. And I learned, so we worked at the same, for some of you may not know this, but we worked at the same radio. I worked in radio. I worked at the same radio station. And I learned so much from Lund about how to organize shows, how to organize thoughts, how to play that game that you had to play. He was brilliant at being loose and free and playing to Greg Papa's strengths while still maintaining structure and discipline. And sometimes actually they had no discipline, but it was worth it when they didn't. There was a story that about Lund that shows you who he is. Going back, so at the end of September 2016, John Middlecoff had upset the Raiders. So the radio station, our contracts are up in a couple of months. This story's been told many times, but it's a good day to tell it again. But our contracts were up at the end of the year. We had like a couple of months left on the contract. And the Raiders were very upset. The Raiders were like a 1-win team, but he was too mean on the postgame show. So they were going to make a change. And so that's what happened. So that Monday, they fired him, and they told me they would let me know what they wanted me to do, and I left too, and whatever. That we're not going to rehash all that. But the Monday that it happened, the previous Friday, Lund called me. I'll never forget it. If you live in the Bay, if you're in San Francisco specifically, I can remember I had just found a really good parking spot on the corner of Greenwich and Gough, and I was parallel parking. It was right on the corner, and he called, and I was talking to him. And I sat in my car, and Lund said, "Hey, I heard a little something that they're going to make a change," and that usually does not happen in radio. Like, people know things, and they're not supposed to know them, or they know them because they're involved in the replacement, and they don't tell you ahead of time. And I'd had a really good relationship with Lund, and he took the time to do that, which I guess shouldn't have. It didn't surprise me necessarily, but it just confirmed that he was the kind of person that I thought he was. And now you can listen to a podcast, and you can hear people talking about edgy, I guess would be one way to put it, content. You hear cursing. Back then, like 10 years ago in radio, you didn't hear people walking some of the fun. Even now, they would say things that you're like, can you say that on radio? But they did, and they got away with it because they were good at it. Pop and Lund were really good at it. So that combination that is no longer together was really, really special. And Lund was really special. And Tolbert was really special. And, radio obviously changed in a major way. I mean, I got a call several months ago from an advertiser who said, it was an email, then we spoke on the phone, and the person said, I normally advertise with KNBR, but I just called them, and the rates are crazy. So what's your rate? And I was like, yeah, like a fifth of that. I got no overhead. It's just me. And that was that. It was great. It was easy. And, I think that it changed so fast for radio, and it's a shame because there are really good people who are doing really good content, but all of a sudden you can look out and go, I don't need a 6-minute commercial break. And the advertisers could see real direct numbers, and I think the Nielsen ratings the radio ratings largely reflected the truth. Like, when KNBR was doing a 12 share or a 8 share, just dominating, that is reflective of what would happen. You would pull up to a stoplight, and I'd be standing on a corner, and a car would pull up, or you'd be with the window down, and you'd hear it everywhere, all the time. So I make fun a little bit of the rating stuff, but it was real. It was the only option. I mean, it just goes to reason. The market gets splintered, and winning doesn't mean just because they're beating the other rate, just because they're beating 95.7 or vice versa. They're fighting over a smaller pie, and so there's less money. But anyway, that the far from eloquent from me today, but both those guys are awesome. I knew Lund very well. The times that I'd come across Tom or work with Tom, and I have a good friend that was tight with him, and he was awesome. He's fantastic as a person, and did the type of radio that will never be heard again. There are people watching this who are like 22 who don't know what I'm talking about. And that's the way it is. That's the world. World changes. That's always the case. And then as for Lund, I mean, I don't know if I realized it at the time, but I was listening to him every single day from the office. He would do a show in the middle of the day. I would do a show that night when I first got there, doing night radio. And I was just stealing stuff from him on a daily basis. Oh, that's good content. That's a good thought. That's a good way to look at it. That's a good perspective. Oh, that's how you work with Greg. That's how you work with a partner. That sort of stuff. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I text with him today. I mean, he'll be great. They both will be fine, but I don't need to hear that from me. So anyway, there you go. There's I probably, if somebody has questions, I guess answer some questions, but I just want to get that thought out there. I just wanted to share that. Thought. By the way, I was talking to the show that I did with Lombardi the other day. I made a comment about, Brock threw for a lot of yards, over 350 yards in the game against the Bucs. And I said, that's probably not the winning formula. In college, it's more so of a winning formula. In the NFL, so Josh Dubow, the AP, he sent me the numbers. What do you think? What do you think the winning percentage for a quarterback who throws for over 350 yards is in the NFL? Now, in college, I was right. 61% of the time, if your quarterback throws for 350 yards, you're going to win the game. In the last 15 years in the NFL, if you throw for 350 yards or more, you win 52% of the time. 52% of the time. So that's not to say you wouldn't want a quarterback who can throw for 350. It's just to say, like, what I think most people would assume, which is if you're throwing for 350, you're trying to play catch up, or your run game's not working, or something like that. It's 52%. 50 throwing for 350 wins you 50, which is exactly, I mean, I didn't really think about the number, but that's not the recipe. So you love when you look at a quarterback stats, oh, this guy throwing for 350 or whatever the case. But really, I don't know what the ideal number is. I'd love to see where that graph starts to dip. Is it 302? My guess is it's probably like, what's the highest completion percentage, yardage winning percentage? My guess is it's 270, something like that. Because that means at 270, you're playing from ahead. 280 maybe, something like that. 256, yeah. You're running the ball, that sort of thing. So the Niners got it done the other day, but it's not the recipe. It's really not the recipe, and it's not their recipe. I mean, I don't think they're pretending at all that it is their recipe. But that conversation elicited some thoughts from some people, and I want to share a couple of comments here. I appreciate when you guys make comments on the YouTube or on the podcast. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast, I was talking to producer Connor, who is going to, I think, probably appear this week on the post game after the Seattle game, and fire some mailbag stuff back up. So, how do you get a mailbag? You leave comments on YouTube. You can send emails to guy@heyguy.co, and you can. And I love when you do this. On the podcast, leave a review on the podcast. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and then leave a question in that. So, all right, let's read a couple YouTube comments here. Drew, okay, this is, some people think I'm too hard on me. I'm too critical. He says, I'm harder on Purdy than most. All right, so I love when people start that way. But damn, dude, you, talking to me, are super negative about him. He made several throws. The one to Kittle in the end zone, CMC up the sideline, the clutch last drive to win the game. Seems like you're going too far in the Grant Cohn direction instead of being objective. This team has a lot of, and then somebody replied to him, Sparrow, said that this team has a lot of fans that thrive on hating Purdy. I think that he is trying to play to that group of people as well as his normal listeners. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today about something unrelated, and we were going through this person's options, and I said, let's stop overthinking it. And when it comes to Brock, like, let's stop hearing every single thing that a person says and then trying to puzzle it together and figure out where on the Purdy spectrum they fall. I'm harder on Purdy than most, but damn, dude, you're super negative. Stop. Enough with the sensitivity. You say something kind of negative, then you hear this. You say something kind of positive. To be fair, I hear from the other side, if there's such a thing. Oh, you think this guy's worth paying $60 million? Yeah, dare, how could? But I'm too hard because you say, like, I didn't think it was great until late in the game. And then, by the way, that's the kind of good quarterback you want. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. And yes, I didn't think it wasn't his best game for 2.5 quarters. And then guess what? This is what the best quarterbacks do. And this is what I said to Lombardi the other day. The best quarterbacks don't get judge gate a game on, did you throw for 350? Like, we don't box score scout Josh Allen. I don't think we should. Lamar Jackson, although his numbers are crazy. He's like 22-4. Pat Mahomes, It's about winning. It's about winning. And to me, the conclusion on Brock the other day was he didn't have his A game for some of that game. And then he made special plays. I don't know how many quarterbacks could consistently make that lollipop throw to Christian, the touchdown to Kittle. Like, we agree, Drew Kennedy, U5Y. We agree. That play to Kittle was ridiculous. And the fact that he was clutch at the end is all I've been asking for. I haven't been asking for Brock to play perfect games or to look like a star for 4 quarters. I've been saying what we really want to see is what we saw at the end of the Bucs game. So I guess sometimes that's pro Brock, sometimes it's anti. It's neither. It's just we're just talking about every little thing constantly. Every throw, every quarter, every game, every little thing gets analyzed. And so I get it. Like, you can't, this is where I would, and now I'll go defend Drew Kennedy, who was critical of me. Like, you can't hear everything that somebody says. And especially on YouTube, where you drop in for 5 minutes. I don't know. Maybe he would say, no, I listen to you all the time, and I think you're negative on Brock. I don't think that's the case. I don't feel negative. I feel positive. So I don't know. And by the way, I'll say this too. I recognize that it's challenging when you leave a comment and then I talk for 5 minutes about it and you don't get a rebuttal. But that's the world we're in here. B. Baker. I like this interaction. This is not Purdy related. B. Baker says, if you're blaming a kicker for your team's woes, then you have more problems than a kicker. And then Andrew replied to him on, this is my YouTube comments, and says, this is something that sounds so profound, but is complete bullshit. If you watch the game, you know the team's problem is the kicker. 9 free points left on the board in a 3-point game. The team's problem this game was the kicker and only the kicker. So the first line, this is something that sounds so profound, but is complete bullshit, I kind of agree with. And I also agree with, if you're blaming your kicker, then you have more problems than a kicker. Why are you in all these close games? If you play in enough close games, and you could argue, well, if he hits all 3 of his kicks, it's not a close game. But this is where I thought, and I thought Kyle, there was a 4th and 3 where they kicked a field goal and missed. I thought he should have gone for it because it would have only cut it to they were down 4. He kicks a field goal. It's still down 1. Like, just go for it. And I don't know if he's going to change anything now that Moody made the game winner. But the ultimate truth of it all is that if you're blaming your kicker, you do have more problems than a kicker. And also, sometimes you're just going to have your kicker win you the game. Sometimes your defense plays better and picks up the offense. Sometimes your offense does that. Sometimes your special teams has to make a play. They won the game despite it, which tells you it can't always be just one thing. I don't know how many teams go, miss 3 kicks and still win. The percentage has to be low, but you can't do it again. But you also can't struggle in the red zone. They didn't turn the ball over. I still think there's another. I think this on Christian, that there has to be like a better version of him than what we just saw there. A more explosive. Like, I think he probably will look a little more explosive as time goes on. That's the point I want to make. Like, he's going to be a passing threat. We saw it the other day. He got more targets in the game than I think Jordan Mason had all year. I think their opportunity, and there's not, they've created so much pain this year that I do understand it's hard for somebody to look at them and be like, oh, I'm bullish. But I think that you got to almost look at Jennings and McCaffrey as kind of trade deadline ads, because they just changed the team in such a dramatic way. And if it were just Christian, you'd say, okay, well, but it's Christian and Juwan Jennings. They changed the team in a significant way, in a really significant way. I do want to hit this real quick because some of you know I'm a big college football guy, and some of you are. This is an NFL story. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN posted Dan Lanning is generating buzz in NFL coaching circles. Dan Lanning's agent's in a tough position in that Dan Lanning has a really good job. Oregon pays him a lot of money. Oregon supports him. They're the number one team in the nation right now. And that's a step up from where they were. And they were already pretty high. But Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart's not leaving Georgia. Kalen DeBoer, after T-shirt gate, has Alabama 10-2 and headed for the playoff. There's not really a job to leverage Oregon against to get him a raise. So you got to leverage him against the NFL. I think actually, even though this might just be a leverage play, I think if I were an NFL owner, I'd be interested in talking to Dan Lanning. I've spent a fair amount of time with him. I think the hype is real. He's legit, not just a really good football coach, but a very excellent leader. He's one of these guys that kind of came from Kirby Smart, but maintained his ability to be himself and not try to be somebody else that you see happen sometimes with successful coaches. So he's just a quality coach who I think could succeed at the NFL level, because part of it is and I know Saban was too, but he's a defensive coach that can coach by leading and by teaching, not just by culture creating. I think it's hard if you're a college coach who's a culture guy to succeed in the NFL. I think that NFL players want you to prove, and Harbaugh is this to a degree, but he was an offensive guy first. He really did a good job with quarterback. I think if I'm a pro, I want to know that you can make me better as a player, right? Not like, hey, I'm a pro. I got a family. My career is on average 3.5 years. I don't need to be motivated. I need to be put in position to succeed. And I think the other thing with Lanning is he's still getting better as a coach. Like he's special. Jesse says, not Dan. My Ducks just got stability at head coach. I don't think he's going anywhere. He is running. He is in position. Like if you are an athletics director in college right now and you need to hire a coach, you want a guy who works for Dan Lanning, who works for Ohio State, who works for Alabama, who works for Georgia, who works for Texas, which historically has always kind of been the case. But now these guys have such a clear knowledge of how to manage NIL in the portal as other people are figuring it out, that if you're at a major power program, it's tough. If you are really threading a thin needle, if you are hiring a coach who did not come from a place with the same resources that you have, because there's just so much more to manage now. And Lanning is very good at that. I have zero idea who this guy is. Don't worry. The college football playoffs are starting in like a month. And you're going to see Dan Lanning all over the place. You know what Dan Lanning is? Dude's a stud. Superstar coach. Big fan. Yeah. Hire him in a heartbeat. But I just if you're him, do you want to go coach the Jets? I mean, sometimes you just have to take jobs because money gets thrown at you, but Oregon can throw money. Oregon can pay him. Like he's at a place that can pay him. And now the other thing is this, if they make a playoff run, you make so much money from a playoff run as a school. The estimates are, it's like the first round alone is worth $50 million to your school. And then it grows from there. So if you make the playoff, if you play a couple of games, if you play 3, you get to the national championship game, your institution has made so freaking much money that they can afford to give you the raise that you want. Now, do you want him to go back home? Does he want somebody? Salvador says he wants the Saints job. Boy. Yeah, I mean, I think I think the lifestyle for college coaches is really challenging now with the portal year round, NIL. If you're an old school fan, if you were a fan for a long time, the national letter of intent, that used to be a thing, it's gone. So there's an early signing period coming up in December, but there's no signing. You don't stay. There's no binding agreement. The only thing that is binding is when you enroll in school in the fall, in the summer. So like a guy can commit and then here's the money. And then he takes the money and goes, I'm going to go. So I think it's pretty stressful. There's no time off. I mean, that's a crazy aspect of it for coaches. So I do want to share with you that this show is also brought to you by, it's time for my PrizePicks picks, where right now you get a free pick on Mike Tyson coming up this Friday against Jake Paul. All right, PrizePicks, code GUY. PrizePicks, code GUY. You use that code, you make a $5 lineup, you'll immediately get $50 into your account. So let's make one. And I'm putting in Mike Tyson. It's half a punch landed against Jake Paul. So that's a freebie right now. All right. And that's where I'm going to begin. Now I'm going to start with, by the way, we've got some good Thursday night football. So let's make a couple more lineups and let's get Christian McCaffrey involved as well. But I'm going to start with Saquon Barkley, if I could spell his name properly here. Let's make a couple of prize picks. Come on, Saquon. Let's go. Oh, I'm in boxing. That's why. This is me showing you how easy this is. Saquon. All right, let's go Saquon more. Let's go. No, I don't want to go that high. Let's go more. God, there's a ton of options. I'm going to go more than 69.5 rushing yards. Against the Commanders. Actually, let's bump it up. That feels low. You can bump it up and make. I'm going to go 89.5 rushing yards against the Commanders. Get the odds up a little. This guy might be the offensive player of the year in the NFL this year. He's facing the 28th ranked rush defense. Commanders allowing 142 yards a game on the ground. The Eagles are running for 176, averaging 111 in the last 5. So that feels like an easy one. I'm going to go, let's stick with Thursday night. If you're listening to this after the fact, we'll have another one for you. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts more than 225. He's been passing yards. He's been balling lately. I don't know if you've noticed. He's exceeded 267 in 3 out of the last 5 games. Marshawn Lattimore did not practice Monday. At this moment, I don't think he's playing Thursday night, so that opens things up for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And then I'm going to add one more here. We're going to go Scary Terry. Let's go Scary Terry, more than 4.5 receptions in the game. He's been Jaden Daniels' favorite target, over almost 7 targets a game, almost 5 receptions a game. So maybe the Eagles get up and the Commanders are trying to play catch up. So there's the lineup. Let's go 50 pays 200 on the flex, or do I want to try and hit all 4 and make 425? I'm just going to go flex. I'm going flex. I can't. I maxed it out. I went too high with the Mike Tyson. I'm putting too much money in, but you can do Mike Tyson and make that happen. So go get the Mike Tyson. Let's make another lineup. And this time, let's get Christian involved. Let's get Christian McCaffrey involved. Let's go more than 79.5 rushing yards against Seattle. Seattle's 26th in rushing yards allowed per game. They allow 139. And Christian's not exactly sharing the load. Garendo had a big game against Seattle the last time, you may remember. So I expect Christian to get rolling this Sunday. Usage-wise against Tampa, 13 carries for him. Mason and Garendo, 1 carry each. So maybe his usage goes up a little bit more. Will it let me do Kittle here? Let's see if I can do 2 players from this game. Let's try. Kittle, more than 54.5 receiving yards. They got to get him involved more early. Seattle's allowing 55 yards a game to tight ends. Not like the Niners spread it to other tight ends. Seattle just cut their best coverage linebacker, Tyrell Dodson. His replacement, Ernest Jones, is better at run defense. His coverage grade, not as good. So Kyle can exploit that matchup. And then I'm going to go Josh Jacobs. Packers, Bears, more than 72.5 rushing yards. We are on quit alert at Hallis Hall. The Bears just fired their OC. Eberflus seat very hot. Bears 24th in rush yards allowed per game, 133. Green Bay is a top 3 rushing offense in the league. By the way, Green Bay near the Niners in red zone touchdown percentage. They're actually slightly. The Niners are 28th. Green Bay's 29th. So they're bad there. But they're 154 rushing yards a game. Jacobs is averaging almost 90. He's averaging 86.6. Just put up 95 rushing yards against a good Lions defense. Let's go power play here. 50 pays 250. Let me make that line up. It did. All right. So there we go. There is my PrizePicks picks. Go to PrizePicks, use the code GUY, and you make a $5 lineup. You'll immediately get $50 into your account. Let's get to some of your comments here. Josh says, did you get a new camera guy? Quality is elite. No. So what happened here, I got to tell you a little switcheroo on the techno. For those of you who like the tech, swapped out the 14-inch or the 16-inch MacBook Pro for the new M4 Pro 14-inch. And the reason is I like the 16-inch computer, but the MacBook Pros are getting bigger, not smaller. They're getting heavier and thicker. And I didn't want a heavier computer than my last MacBook Pro, which was the 2019 Intel-based MacBook Pro. So I went with the 14-inch MacBook Pro. But now I've lost some screen size. So I swapped out. I had the 27-inch desktop Thunderbolt Mac monitor, several years old. That's out. And the new 32-inch, I'm working with a 32-inch monitor now. And my 14. But the problem, what happened is the way my camera was mounted on my old 27-inch monitor doesn't mount on the 32-inch. So I'm making a change there. But until I can make that change, the camera angle is here, which I kind of like. The only problem with having the camera angle here, for those of you listening on the podcast, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But hopefully, if you need any reviews on the new M4, I exported a video the other day. It took 4 minutes on the new M4 Pro on the old Intel i9 on the old Mac. It took 14 minutes. So major upgrade there. But if you're watching, if you're listening, I guess you can't see this. But there's a tech review for you. But anyway, this is not my preferred setup. But anyway. There you go. All right. What else we got here? Is Puni got somebody asked, is Puni going to be an all-pro? All-pro seems, you know what? I'll research that. I do not have a beat on the guards up for all-pro. All-pro is significant. I mean, Pro Bowl would be pretty great. All-pro is kind of crazy, but all right. I got to go look at the guards. But there's some agreement there that on the stream, of course, there's some agreement. Lanning would bomb in the NFL. I would always be hesitant if I'm one of these college guys. Although it's easy to say, like, go to the NFL, like Saban. You leave LSU, you go to Miami, it doesn't work. You were so successful in college, you just come back and you go coach Alabama, right? So if you're Lanning, I guess you could go coach in the NFL. If it works, great. You have a summer, unlike college teams. And then if it doesn't work, all right, you just come back and then maybe you coach Georgia or Alabama or LSU or whatever. I mean, I think college coaches are just gassed. Absolutely gassed. Tommy says, blaming the kicker is wrong. That's why I blame the long snapper. Signed, Debo, probably. I think it's pretty underrated how weird, like, everyone reacted and then moved on, and it almost feels underrated how crazy it is to have a wide receiver attack your snapper, and how crazy it is to have the snapper. The part of it that's crazy is not the snapper overreacting and defending the kicker. Because, I think there's just some chip on the shoulder, like, people view us like we're not really part of the team, blah, 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 blah. Oh, here you want some Purdy negativity. Here's Drew says, Purdy rarely has a good first half. More times than not, he doesn't show up till the second half. That does not feel true to me. But I guess we could check the numbers on that. But I would say that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel accurate. You know, we were talking about Lenore the other day, and producer Connor, who's not here right now, he's got a job, but producer Connor gave me some numbers that stunned me a little bit. And I do think when it comes to coverage grades I love the like the premium stats. I use them a lot on PFF at college too. Some of the grades, you know, I tend to not look at the grades. It's not something I don't look at the grades. I mean, just trying to think, like, I'll look at the grades when it comes to free agency, or, you know, like when it comes to talk about trades. But so all of that said, I take this with a major grain of salt. But it also is interesting. Renardo Green, 49ers rookie corner. Okay. Here's where I'm just giving you percentages here. He's 11th in the NFL in his grade in zone coverage. He's 10th in the NFL in his grade in man coverage. His coverage grade is 3rd, and his overall grade is 3rd. That can't be right. That's crazy. Now, look, he plays 25% of the. He plays way less snaps than your true starters do. Like, compare him to Lenore. He's played less than half as many snaps as Diamador Lenore. So when you look up and like Lenore is 55th in a man coverage grade and 26th in zone, you look at some of the best corners in the league. Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie are 27th and 28th. Derek Stingley Jr. is 45th. AJ Terrell's 48th. So, like, I think we don't look at the grades. I'm not saying to go look at the grades. But it is pretty interesting how good, just something to like. I do think it matches 3rd. It doesn't match the eye test 3rd, but you do watch him and go like, there's something here. And I think when you have a number 1 corner on your team and you're the number 2 or the number 3 guy, it really frees you up to develop. You know, I think Lenore benefited from playing with Mooney Ward, where the number 1 receivers maybe getting covered by somebody else. And you have time to learn a little bit. And here's Lenore, who's now a mainstay. He's paid the number 1 corner of the future. He's taken on those guys. And that gives Renardo Green a chance, a good chance. It gives Malik Mustafa a chance to develop. Like, it just takes a little pressure off when you're a cornerback who doesn't have the brightest spotlight on you. Jesse, Last Second Sports, doing some production work here. It says Purdy, 7, in response to the other question. Purdy, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception in the first half. 5 touchdowns, 6 picks in the second half. That statement is unequivocally false. It didn't feel right. I did look at Purdy today, see 7 picks on the season, and go, that number doesn't feel like he's had a 7 interception season so far. I mean, you know, that's a 14 interception year, which is, I guess, fine. What Purdy's touchdown? What is he like? I think he's 14 touchdowns and 7 picks right now. You know, 28 and 14. I don't love those numbers. If you're going to throw, and I don't think he'll end up at 14 picks. I think a couple of them have been freaky, but that's what happens. Like, you throw freaky picks sometimes. Lamar, did I say 24 and 4 earlier? He's 24 touchdowns, 2 picks. But no, Brock is 12 and 7. Okay, so like when people are like, you're too negative, which of course is stupid. But if you just double the numbers, and you don't really double them because it's been 9 games, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, 24 and 14 is not great, right? If you're going to throw 24 touchdowns, you better throw like 7 picks. If you're going to throw 14 picks, then I'd love for you to throw 35 touchdowns, you know? Now, I understand. I'm not saying those numbers are necessarily representative of the way he has played, but they are his numbers right now. I don't think his interception number will double. My guess is he'll finish with like 12 picks and maybe get McCaffrey back and Jennings back. Maybe there's like, I do think there's definitely room to grow in the red zone. And I know somebody sent me earlier his red zone touchdown. It says like 9-1 in the red zone. Because I said I think he needs to be a little better in the red zone. And I still do. Like running the ball is their primary issue down there. But I don't want to reduce it to just touchdowns, picks, and go, see, it's not him. I just think everything comes back to the quarterback. Good decisions, finding windows, tighter window for a guy who throws with anticipation, red zone, tighter windows, tougher throws, etc. So everybody's like, I don't think you can ever look at the red zone and be like, we're not scoring enough touchdowns down there. What has to happen? And then I say, well, the quarterback maybe needs to be a little bit better. And then you go, no, it's not the quarterback. How could it never? How does a quarterback have no hand in it? So I'm not saying it's all on him. It's not. It starts with the run game, but everything in the passing game starts with the quarterback too, and the coach. The coach. Anyway, so it's tough to predict at this point. My guess is he'll near that 30 touchdown number and get around 12, and where it is right now won't look as weird. And I don't particularly, I mean, I care about touchdowns and picks, of course, like everybody. I'm not judging Brock on that right now. But 12 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. By the way, you know what Mahomes' numbers are? 12 touchdowns, 9 picks. CJ Stroud, you know what CJ Stroud's numbers are? 12 touchdowns, 6 picks. Geno's got 10 picks, by the way. So there you go. I mean, I think that's a good example of like, it's not the be all end all. Just find ways to win games in clutch moments. But thank you for the research there, Jesse. All right. Is that what I want to share with you today? Yeah, it is. It is. I appreciate y'all. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the podcast, getting mailbag stuff fired back up. So leave a review. That helps the pod. 5-star review, Apple Podcast, and leave a question there. We'll rope those in and have fun with that. And no, I know some of you like to ask, so I'll tell you right now, no football game for me this weekend. Do have a really good college basketball schedule coming up. A lot of Oregon, UCLA a couple times. Some other stuff that'll be fun to tell you about because not all of you care, which is totally fine with me. But some of you are nice enough to ask, so I like to share that sometimes. All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging. If you need any help picking out a new MacBook Pro or a monitor, let me know.